Welcome to I Wish You Could Hear This, where we explore great stories and simple proven steps to help you thrive in life, faith, and relationships.
In our research, we've heard hundreds of hope-filled strategies for marriage, parenting, leadership, and life that are grounded in science and consistent with biblical truth. And now you can hear them too.
I'm Shaunti Feldhahn.
And I'm Jeff Feldhahn.
Sometimes after kids come along, a married couple wakes up one day and realizes we are more like roommates than like the best friends who started out on this like special road of marriage. And so Jeff and I, we hear all the time in our research, I feel like I lost my wife, or I feel like I don't know my husband anymore. How can we get back to that tight marriage, that companionship, that love that we're each longing for? Arlene Pellicane's book, Making Marriage Easier, tackles that with the subtitle, How to Love and Like Your Spouse for Life. So that is our topic on the podcast today.
Arlene, thanks so much for joining us on I Wish You Could Hear This.
It's great to be here. That what Shaunti is saying is so true. Wow, that was great.
Thanks. Now, Arlene, I don't remember when our paths first crossed, but you were like my sister from another mother from the very beginning. I think, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, maybe at a
Probably so,
MomCon,
yes.
you know?
Yeah, that's what I think.
The
Yeah,
MOPS,
like a
now
MOPS
MomCo
kind of
convention.
yes.
Oh, okay, you're going to have
yes.
to, for the guys that are tuning in, what is MOPS?
Okay, so it used to be called Mothers of Preschoolers, but
Okay.
they have expanded now into, moms of a lot of different ages. And so they now are
We've
called...
graduated. We don't have to pick up the mop anymore. Now we get to go do other things.
There you go. So that they have a convention every year, and
Got it.
and they have a lot of speakers come in, and I think that's where we ended up having a dinner together. And I'm like, I like this lady. Like, I wish we lived near each other instead
And
of on
me
opposite
thinking the
sides.
exact same thing, of course.
You're so
Yes.
sweet.
That's awesome. Well, Arlene, for our listeners, could you just kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you live, so on, like that?
Yes, I live in San Diego with my husband, James. We've been married for 26 years. I was the girl that was like, oh my goodness, I want to get married. I want to have the storybook. I want to drop my books and him to pick them up and me to look at him, and he'll have like some kind of Bible in his arms and I'll know, wow, he's the one. He's a Christian. And I went through high school. I went through college. I went through 4 years of work. And I was like, where is this person? So when I met James in graduate school and we eventually married, it was like, this is the big league. Like, this is really what I have been waiting for. And then when we wanted to have children, we thought, oh, we'll have children. And then I had trouble having children because of infertility. And we were like surprised by that. So, and then when we had a child, it was like, oh my goodness, God's given us a child. So I really treasure having a husband, having children, because I had felt like those were things I waited for. And because you kind of treasure the things that you wait for, I have really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being a mom. I've enjoyed being a wife. And as we looked back on our 26 years, it was like, it's not like the whole thing was easy, but it wasn't like this just drudgery, every year, every day, like we're barely making it. So I really was trying to think like, what is it that we did? Like, we're not superhuman. We're very normal people. We have 3 children. Like, we're not super rich. You know what I mean? It's like, what is it that we're doing that's helping us? And that's kind of where this new book, Making Marriage Easier, came from. And then I also write about technology, because technology is a big new thing. And it's kind of that interruption in parenting, the interruption in marriage. So I write about that as well in Screen Kids and different books like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I want to dive into this because normally, so you released Making Marriage Easier. And normally because I endorsed your book, right? And normally
Yes.
when you send me a copy of one of your new books, I'm like, okay, cool. I can post something about this on social media. And this time I was like, wait a minute, we have a podcast. This is something that everybody can be interested in. This is a great topic for one.
And when you're saying everybody, this topic, this is going to be appropriate for guys also to listen
This
in
what
on,
has
right?
been so encouraging to me, Jeff, is men have been coming up to me, and you know how like a woman will buy a book and be to her husband like, "Please, let's read this,"
Oh,
and the
gee,
husband's
no
like,
idea what that
"Whatever."
feels like.
Yeah, I have no
can't
idea
tell
what that
you
is.
how many books showed up on the side table next to my side of the bed
Oh my
from
word,
Shaunti
that's
saying,
so
"This is
funny.
a great book."
You need to read this.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so funny. So when I have a husband come up to me and say to me, Arlene, I'm reading your book and like that is so funny, or like that is so my wife and I, or like, oh, I finally, you gave me a voice, like you gave me, now my wife kind of understands my side. So that makes me so happy when a dad comes up to me and says, I bought this book for my 2 young adult sons that are married, things like that. So it really is resonating with men too, which makes me super happy.
That's
Because it's easier. Men like easier.
right, right. Well, so that's kind of one of my pet peeves. Believe it or not, we've attended some marriages, and as part of
Wedding
this-
ceremonies.
yeah,
Yeah.
marriages, wedding ceremonies, and as part of the ceremony, the pastor may say something like, "Now we all know that marriage is hard," and I just always think like that is just the worst advertisement for marriage. I mean, we got to work on the branding, get it a little better. So,
Well,
so
especially since we found in our data that most people do enjoy being married, like the vast majority. Now, I mean, some don't, and there's issues that come up, and there's struggles, and we always encourage people on the podcast, please reach out for help from a pastor or from a mental health professional, a Christian mental health professional, if you can find one in your area. But most people just hit speed bumps.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
what do you
Yes.
mean by
making marriage easier.
easier? Yeah.
Yes. So it's not easy, but it's easier. And it is this whole idea that like, okay, I made a vow to be with this person for the rest of my life. So this is not an option like I'm going to go in, I'm going to go out. So this is what I'm going to do. So just like if I knew, okay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to use it, I'm going to be healthier, I'm going to do it. Well, how would I make that easier? Well, I would kind of make that specific. I would say, I'm going to go to a class on Tuesday, this particular class. I could go with a friend. That would even make it easier. I could put out my shoes and my things,
I
but the day
love
before.
that.
So I know it's Friday. So now it's like, I don't have all these roadblocks to me getting to the gym, but I know exactly where I'm supposed to go, who's going to meet me there. If I don't show up, like that person will be mad at me. So I know I'm going to go. I've got the motivation. Everything's laid out. So it's more frictionless. It's you just do it. So
You can
think
hold on a
how-
second, Arlene.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my husband
no.
here. You can appreciate
I
this,
totally
right?
get this, because this is, and honestly, all clicked for me a few years ago when I read James Clear's Atomic Habits, and
which I
how
love.
you
Yes.
anchor particular things that you want to
Yes.
do with things you're already doing, so that you just kind of begin to make them automatic. And that's what you're describing.
And that's what you're describing. Okay, so now all the guys
Yeah.
are sitting
so
up.
So then it would look like, you just thinking, how can I make this easier? So instead of thinking like, oh, this is so hard, we're just at an impasse, we're stuck, you start your mind and pray with the Spirit that, God, show me, how do I make this easier? And the Lord will show you, and you'll think, okay, you know what? I'm going to start with a compliment a day. That every day I'm going to look for one thing. And you don't have to do a million things. Just do one thing. James Clear, 1% better every day. So you just think to yourself, okay, I'm just going to start with a compliment. Maybe I've not been feeling great about you. I'm just going to start with one compliment a day for a week. And that's what you're going to do. And then the next week you might be like, you know what? I'm going to pray out loud for my spouse when they walk out the door. Whatever it is that's going to be your habit, that is just this very simple thing. But all of a sudden you're like, wow, it's easier to love you because I have found just one thing, right, that I like about you. Or when you're praying out loud, like just imagine if you're leaving, but your spouse gives you a hug and just says, God, as so-and-so, as Shaunti goes out today, that Lord, you'll give her favor, you'll protect her, you'll sing over her, amen. I mean, it took you like 10 seconds. But now that spouse feels loved and hugged and sent out with these good words. So there are these really little things that can make marriage a whole lot easier.
That's fantastic.
I love this so much. And I know that our listeners will too, because it's all about the little things. And this podcast is all about the little things that make a big difference. So
And for us guys, I mean, I just got to tell you, I mean, what I've found over the years is that you women, you will love just learning things about relationships and about us. You're just interested in those things. Not that we're not, but for the most part, just tell me what to do. Make
That's
it
right.
practical. Make it so that I can
Right.
execute on it. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're describing.
Which is fantastic.
It
Okay,
is.
so big picture. Let's pull back from into the big picture for just a second. So I said at the beginning that one of the things I was looking forward to talking about is the fact that everybody kind of hits this point in their marriage where I love you, we're spending time together, but the kids make things complicated. Those darn kids.
Darn kids.
They make things a little bit complicated, and it's easier to focus perhaps on the kids because it's what's right in front of us. Like, okay, you have volleyball, you're taking him to track. Like, I can't tell you how many of those kind of conversations we had. And then you wake up one day and you're like, I feel like a roommate. So big picture, what is some of the specific practical advice that you have for not happening, for how to prevent that feeling like a roommate thing?
It starts first with a mindset that, okay, my marriage is the priority relationship in this family. And today, most of us, we struggle with this, especially moms, that we might give that lip service, like, oh yeah, my spouse is the most important. But, I love to give the little test of, if my daughter, she plays tennis, if I have to sit in the car and wait for her for 2 hours while she practices, because it's not, I can't get back and forth, I'll easily do that. I'll bring a book, I'll sit in the car. I won't complain. I'll be happy. But if my husband said to me, honey, we're down to one car. Can you bring me to this office thing? Just wait for me for 2 hours. And I'd be like, you can take a lift home. Like, why am I here waiting for you? So we can give it lip service. Like, yeah, honey, you're my priority relationship. But in truth, when that baby comes into the picture, we're all in for the baby. And that totally makes sense. But then the baby grows up, 2-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and we are still orbiting around the baby. The child is the most important. Where are we going to vacation? Well, where do our kids want to vacation? Where should we eat for dinner? Well, this is what the kids like. What should we watch on movie night? Well, this is what the kids like. And to realize, wait a minute. And my husband's been actually really good about this, that he's like, we will vacation where I want to vacation because I'm the one paying for it,
That's
So it
hilarious.
is the mindset of the two people, husband and wife, realizing, you know what? And coming back to the first love, you are my priority relationship. So you look at your 7-year-old and you say, my word, someday I'm going to be your extended family. Like someday I'm going to be probably a mother-in-law and a grandma, and you're going to have a different core family, and I better take care of my husband because he's my core family and he's who I'm going to grow old with. So that is something that, now I'm entering empty nest. So this is much more in my mind than it was, let's say 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I'm not really even thinking this way. So the sooner you can think that my marriage is the most important thing. So if we go on date night, but my kid cries, I'm not going to crumble. I'm not going to look at my spouse and be like, oh, you know what? We shouldn't go out. Billy's having a bad day. We shouldn't go out. No, I would say, you know what, Billy, your babysitter safe. Grandma's not that awful. Whatever it is, you stay here and I'm going on the date night because that's what we do. So really prioritizing in your mind, I have got to take care of this marriage. And then your habits, like a date night, that you don't sacrifice that, even though you have all these busy years. And I think a lot of it too is carving out time for each other. And it can be small. It might be when you start feeling like you're drifting apart or just very roommate-like, you can say that, like say it to your spouse. We are so busy. We've got all this stuff with the kids. I just feel like we're roommates. And then just be quiet. So this is not accusatory. This is not like, why aren't you doing things for me? Why aren't you like it's just, and just let that sit and then hear what your spouse has to say. And then, you know what? Why don't we just, on Friday nights, why don't we just hold hands and walk around the block by ourselves, and that be our little routine? Just something to get back to hey, it really is you and me, whether it's looking at old pictures together, whether it is the 5 to 30-second kiss, as I remember hearing, the sex therapist Cliff and Joyce Penner, they would say the 5 to 30-second daily kiss, and let them know it's not like the go signal for, the whole thing, but this is just something that we're going to do to like connect, because then now you're not roommates, because roommates don't do that. Roommates don't do it. So even if you start it and you don't feel like it, you don't want to kiss the person, but you actually started doing it, even, I talk about this, and I mean, I will be the first to admit, James and I don't do this daily kiss, but then now I'm talking about it and I'll think, oh, I better kiss him today. So you go through this thing where it's like, do things that roommates don't do. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we're not roommates anymore because we are sharing intimate things, details about our lives. I am a really good listener to you. I hold your hand when we walk in the store. I kiss you passionately. Like, roommates don't do that. So even if you don't feel like it, start with those actions. And I really think it helps turn that then back towards the marriage again.
That's fascinating. So when Shaunti and I were newly married in the 90s,
Oof.
we lived in New York, and we attended Redeemer Presbyterian Church, where Tim Keller
My goodness.
was the pastor.
And it was like sitting under C.S. Lewis every Sunday.
Really
It was
remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, we're listening to these podcasts and I can't imagine like you being
deep.
there for real.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So one of the things I can still remember from one of his messages, he raised this question to the congregation. He said, can anyone give what is the number one predictor for whether individuals are going to be best friends? And do you remember what
we
he
talk
said?
about it in
We do
the
in
Happy
the book.
Marriages book. Yeah.
Go ahead and share.
Okay, so there's a study about this, which is interesting, that basically says the number one predictor of friendship isn't what you think. It's not like shared interests. It's not
Comparable temperaments.
Yes, it's not that you have the best temperaments together or that you share values. Those are all there, but they're like a distant second, third, fourth. The number one predictor of friendship is geographic proximity. You are the best friends with the people you see the most often. And there was an incredible lesson there when we started our research with what makes the happiest couple so happy, and found out they just try to spend time together. Like literally, like you said, just let's walk around the block. Right?
Exactly.
Like even these little things, so that because that is what builds that sense of friendship.
In our natural inclination is that if something is uncomfortable to us, we kind of avoid it. And it's that negative spiral.
You mean like if you're a little tense and it feels like...
So therefore, let's just kind of separate and go to our own corners.
Not separate the marriage,
yes,
but like,
of course.
Like,
yes,
let's just...
but you go in the living room,
Correct.
I'll go over here
Yes.
because
And
it's
then-
not warm.
And then
It's not-
we
yes.
kind of institutionalize that, not meaning to, but over time, that just kind of becomes the natural habit.
Like he's in his, home office gaming and she's,
Right.
working on whatever it is at the kitchen table, as opposed to what you're suggesting, Arlene, is basically like, okay, how do we institutionalize the things that bring us together instead?
Yeah. And family mealtime, that's a one that I call that the power hour, that if you are eating together with your spouse around a table, so not like sitting in chairs watching TV with food in front of you, but around a table, you are sitting there, you are unhurried. I'm not saying you have to sit there for 3 hours, but you're not just like eating and dashing out. So you're able to have a conversation. There are no screens present. You do that hour, day after day after day. You're going to establish that feeling of warmth, right, at home. So that's a really good place to start. It feels funny, right, because it used to be everyone would eat together. Like, what a stupid thing to talk about. But now if you ask people, like, do you eat together? How often do you gather around the table? It doesn't have to be homemade food, but it's food and you're at the table together. How often does that happen? And people are like, a few times a week. It's like, wait a minute, what? Like, that doesn't happen more often. So that's a great place to start that environment of this is a warm place and everybody loves food, so it's a good call.
So it's for maybe for some of the men listening to this, one of the things that we might, and I'm looking at you just to make sure I'm okay with like saying this as
Yes.
a suggestion, maybe for some of the husbands listening
Okay.
to this as a, what's on my to-do list, my
Okay.
business plan is your wife is unlikely, if you raise this as an idea, she's unlikely to go, oh, that's just not going to work. That's not a good idea. Like most wives would love that, but it kind of has to be both parents have to be totally all in on that.
Mm,
And so often, if you come home, let's just say you both work. And you both come in from a long day and it's your turn to make the dinner or her turn to make the dinner and you go into the other room and turn on the news, she's going to feel like, he's had just a really long day. He needs some downtime. Mentioning a family dinner is just going to be one more thing. So if you, as the husband, say, can we make sure that we do family dinner at least twice a week, where we don't go in and watch with
uh,
food on our laps and watch the TV, she's going to probably jump at that.
okay. Honestly, I just for most guys, it just doesn't hit our consciousness. It,
What doesn't?
that's so important. We might think like, yeah, yeah, I'd like that, but that maybe that's just me, and so we don't even raise the question. These are kind of our routines. We've already got them built, and it's just easy. We know what we're doing. So changing routine is always a
Yes.
little bit of a challenge. Um, but if I know that that's of high value to you and ultimately will be of value to me,
Yeah.
then I think most
That
guys
will
would say, I'm all in.
Yeah.
that would make her
Because if you still have kids in the home, then that's opportunity for the dad to say like, Dad, this is the way you
Right.
can get to know your kids better. So it gives you a moment in the day to get to know them better. And then if it's just the husband and wife, it is the same.
Yeah.
Like this is the way to have that connection with your wife. So she's so much easier to live with. I mean, can
Yeah.
you imagine if you think, okay, all I have to do is sit down and eat with you, and you'll be so much easier to live with? I could do that.
exactly
Yeah,
though. I
that's
mean,
great.
and that's an example
Practical.
of that's a practical thing that a husband could really take a lead in
Hmm.
saying, even if it's once a week that we start with and we aim for a goal of twice a week.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of how busy things were when the kids were both in high school and middle school, and there's all the activities and all the things, and both of us are working, and you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even think about being proactive about that. And yet, you would want to be
Hmm.
proactive about things like, okay, is my child going to be able to get into that college in 4 years?
Right.
And so you think ahead about, okay, you know what? They really don't have a whole lot of activities around such and such. Like maybe trying a sport would be really good for them just to try. And that would be something that might speak to colleges in
Mm.
4 years. But you don't do that with your marriage. So let's
Yeah,
do
like
that
how
with our
much more
marriage.
important is the marriage?
Yes,
Yes.
so let's
Yeah.
just try once or twice a week and think ahead and go, okay, that's worth it.
Yeah.
So
That's
anyway,
And
great.
get it to be a habit, so it's not like all this thinking. So once you start it, that's the hard
Yep.
part. But once then it's a habit that pulls you like, oh yeah, Tuesday and Thursday nights we always eat together. Like,
Right.
and then it's like it's a given, and then you're not even thinking about it
and
anymore.
that's
Yeah,
that's the key,
that
I
is.
think.
So one of the things that I mean you've talked about is the impact of social media, and you know
Screens.
screens, all of that sort of stuff. I'd love you to unpack that, but I'm gonna just kind of preface this, my own personal maybe pet peeve on
Okay.
it is that what I find sometimes is that in social media, whether it's on marriage stuff, whether it's on politics or whatever, we gravitate toward the people who understand our pain or our own anxiousness, and they affirm that feeling. And beginning, I see it in some of these corners of social media, whether it's men's groups or women's groups, while they can be tremendously supportive, sometimes they focus on the things that the other spouse is doing wrong all the time. And we become sensitized to seeing the wrong rather than celebrating the great things that Shaunti does, or our wives do. And so
Or our
or our
husbands do.
husbands do.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about whatever,
Yes.
on this whole social media thing?
What you just said is so profound and wise. I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more because it's true. We come online and then we're affirmed like, oh yeah, your husband, he really is a jerk. Like he didn't take you on those vacations and he hasn't been listening. And maybe if you're not happy, you should get out. Or you're looking at things like, wow, look at this man, look at this relationship. And it used to be before social media, you're just gauging yourself against your community, right? The community of couples you know. But now you're going online and you're gauging yourself against all these couples, and not just couples, like influencer couples and couples that are, being put in your feed to irritate you and annoy you and get you upset and they make you
Yep.
jealous, because those are all emotions that keep you online.
Right.
So your attention is there. So we have to understand, wait a minute, this whole thing is geared to kind of show me, like, look what you don't have. So I think if you think of social media as a place and you're very proactive about just looking at following who you want, getting the information you want, and then getting out, think of it like a hot potato kind of thing. Or maybe you need to step away for a month and just see, hey, did that help my attitude? Because you really are entering a dangerous place when you are just going, and whether you are distracted, whether you see a prettier wife, a more handsome or kinder husband. For the men, it's a prettier wife. For the women, it's like, oh, look at how sweet that husband is.
true.
And you start looking at these things, your heart, it's deceitful and wicked, and we are easily led astray. So realize when you're looking at social media, it's not like it used to be when it was TV or a magazine and you knew they're just playing to the camera. Like someone came in, cleaned up their house, took pictures. We got that in TV and magazines. But we look at social media and we're like, look at their life.
That's real.
Look at all they have. That's real. We don't have that. And obviously that's not real either, but it's portrayed as real. So to understand that, and to be, bad company corrupts.
Yep.
And we might feel like it's not face to face, but if you are spending hours online social media, as most people are, if you're spending 2-3 hours looking at that, guess what? That's your company. And that bad company is going to have a corruptive effect, because think of, on your scroll, are there so many things that are encouraging your marriage? Are there so many things that are saying, aren't you glad for the spouse you've got, or like, tell your spouse 5 things you love about them today, or like, all these pictures of happy married people and children. And, it's like, that's not what social media is filled with. So to realize, yes, those things can be found, but the other stuff is much more easily found. And then let's just pretend, and I do mean pretend, that it's a neutral content. Okay, let's just pretend that even that it's there with you on date night, in the house, all those things. I like to refer to it as like the third person. Like you wouldn't be on a date and have this random person sitting next to you that you do not know. You'd be like, why are you here? But we'll have the phone in our lap, on the table, whatever, where, it just moves and you're like attending to it. So it's like a third person. So remember, in your relationship, all those empty spots that you used to like look at your spouse or like talk to them, well, now we're picking up our phones, right? And we're checking our emails and things that seem legitimate, but that's a habit. So even in the home, like environmentally, maybe there's a certain place you put your phone, and you're much more mindful of not always checking it all the time, walking around the house, continually looking at it, to see. And it's just think, this is a stranger that I've allowed in my house, a third person, and I don't even know them, but I'm very interested in them. So just kind of realize that's not the person you should be attending to. It is your spouse, the real person. And is just going to get like worse and worse and worse as technology does more and more and more in our lives. So we have to be really intentional about guarding the spaces in our house so that that third person isn't always there interrupting.
It's interesting. The newest research project that we're in the middle of working on right now is on mental health. And it's studying what is it that the people who have maybe gone through stuff and come out the other side with wisdom to share, people who are mentally and emotionally, pretty healthy, even if they've gone through like severe anxiety and they figured out how to actually have a thriving life emotionally. What are those things? That's what we're trying to dig out. But it strikes me as you say that, Arlene, one of the things that I've heard that I hadn't quite realized until just now when you said this that I've heard from some of these folks, because we've been doing these interviews now for over a year, is that there is a practice amongst some of them of, like, for example, we did some interviews with some first responders. And, that's a field that has like incredible trauma, like easy to bring home, right? Not to mention the rest of us who just have maybe normal jobs, that stuff gets in the way, or the email from the colleague and it dings and we're like looking at that. And one of the things that I heard from those, it was all men that we talked to on that trip, was that they would come home and sometimes literally sit in their car for like 5 minutes and go, okay, I am now a husband. I am now a father. I am transitioning mentally and emotionally into a different space where I'm going to be at home. And yeah, the radio might beep and call me back, but I'm not going to be checking my phone. I'm not going to be doing this. I'm going to be fully present, because that's the only way that I can leave what I've just experienced all day and enter into being a good dad and a good husband. And it strikes me that that principle is for all of us. And I think that's what I've been hearing in these interviews, is that they kind of mentally shift when they come home to being home. And I anyway, and thank you for saying that, Arlene.
That's
because
so good.
that may end up being
can
a
you think,
chapter.
Because can you think if you come to the house and then you mentally shift, I'm going to be a husband, I'm going to be a wife.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah, well, that's
because
a
it's not
making marriage
something
easier
we're thinking
thing,
about.
right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
what makes it easier to go to the gym? What makes it easier to have a great marriage? That's
Yeah.
an example.
In the amazing things that you're describing, Arlene, it's not splitting the atom. I mean, these are things that all us knuckleheads
Yeah.
can do.
Yes.
I'm
We
serious.
can do these things. Exactly. That's why I was like,
No.
oh, James and I can do this. Everybody can do this.
Yes. Okay, so let's flip to the flip side of that thing of not looking at all the things that cause us distress or kind of dissatisfaction. So you talk about gratitude, right? You talk about transforming a kind of the temperature in the home, that atmosphere of the home, from one where complaint is sort of a standard thing to one where gratitude is. So talk to us about that, and because everybody wants that. So
Yes.
what can people
It's
do?
like- It's like, think about the people in your life. Do you really love being with that complainer? Do you really love being with that whiner at work? You're just like, yay, that person's at the lunch table. I'll go sit next to them. We don't want that. So the same thing in our own homes, when we are the ones complaining, of course, we feel very righteous, like I deserve, I'm not wrong. But if you think of the flip side, wow, what is it like to live with me? It'll help you realize that, wow, I've got to change. And that is a heart change for good that the Lord wants to work in all of us. You think of the children of Israel. What was their sin? It wasn't that they were having adultery or all these, big sins in marriage that we would think. It's that they complain. They're grumbling. They're saying to God, this quail, I'm sick of it. This manna, I'm sick of it. The cloud by day, the fire by night. Yeah, that was miraculous the first month, but now I'm really tired of that. Can't you do something else? And that is, you can see, like, God does not like that, right? They did not enter the promised land because of the grumbling. And when we were first married, it was like, yay, thank you, God, right? Every one of us, none of us came to the altar like, oh, shucks, I got to be with this person.
Right, right. We had
were
gratitude
so filled
naturally.
with gratitude.
Yes.
Yes. So it's going back over and over and over. God, I am grateful for my spouse. I am grateful. And that attitude of being grateful, that's going to make us more like Jesus. That's going to make us easier to live with. That's going to make everything around us look different. I remember when I got my first book contract, I was so excited. So I say to James, look at this, I'm going to have a book come out. Let's celebrate. And we're real frugal. And we were like, okay, we'll go out to the grocery store and get 2 gallons of ice cream. Like, we didn't even go out. We were like, let's go get ice cream.
love that.
So I told him, go get chocolate, just make sure something is chocolate. So he comes back with our kids, then we're 5 and 3. He comes back and he's like, okay. And I opened one was like butter pecan. I was like, okay. And then the other one was cookies and cream. And I'm like, neither of these are chocolate. And I was so mad, Jeff. You can imagine, like, I gave you such a simple instruction just to go to the grocery store, bring me back chocolate. I am pregnant with our third child, and we are celebrating my book deal with literally 2 things of ice cream from the grocery store. And you cannot get this right. I was just like, I just cannot believe this. So I'm eating this cookies and cream, and I'm just like steam is like coming out of my head. And Ethan, he's 5, he goes, Mom, you don't look very grateful. You say we should always be grateful for what we're served. And it was such a funny thing. And it just broke the ice. And I just said, you're right, Ethan. I should be grateful for what we're served. And it's so funny, like as a parent, right? When your kids parrot back the things you've said to them. So I think that's a beautiful thing about being a parent is you get to be accountable to all these good things and ideas that you have. And then it really was a very humorous picture of the sooner we can get from the point of annoyance and irritation and frustration, and we can turn that around in our mind and our heart, say, God, I am still grateful. Like even though obviously that was funny because it's just ice cream, let's say it's much more serious, it could still be, God, I'm grateful that you're going to get us through this. I am grateful that we're not alone as we go through this. I am grateful that we're going to make it on the other side better, stronger. The sooner you can make that U-turn between I am frustrated, I am angry, I am bitter, I am disappointed in my marriage, and you make that U-turn of like, but God, I'm grateful that you're with us. And you turn that to thanksgiving, you turn that to praise, you turn that into be grateful for your spouse, that they're with you through that. That is just like magic sauce. That just like helps shaves off years of pain. It just helps you through it.
And you know, my favorite verse in all of Scripture is Psalm 103:2, which says, praise the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits.
That's beautiful.
So the psalmist there, you know, I'm sure he was going through a difficult time. And it's easy to focus on the challenge that we're facing as opposed to reminding ourselves, but God is faithful. Yeah. Look at what he did here. Look at what he did there. And all of those things. And I got to tell you, when Shaunti brings home the ice cream that's not my flavor or whatever it is.
Yes.
I struggle to remind myself of all the good things, the great things that Shaunti does for me that I just kind of take for granted. Like I'm deserving of, or, she just loves doing that. Yes. So I'll just let her keep doing that great thing. But, but it's exactly what you're saying. And it does just require some mental effort. At the beginning, at least.
So yes. We need to wrap up, I think, as we're like, but I just have one more question, and I'm kind of wondering, you might have the same kind of question in your head, because we hear this kind of thing.
Yeah. So you advocate for serving your spouse, but some might equate this with sacrificing their own well-being.
Yes.
And certainly there are corners of the internet
that would
definitely say that.
Yes.
So can you clarify what you mean there?
Yeah, so I am not talking about like, oh, my spouse abuses me and it's okay because I'm serving them. So we're not talking about anything that is harmful to that in that sense. So please don't hear that. Oh, these Christians, they just say to serve each other, So please be wise in this. However, you think of Jesus, the Son of God. And what does he do? How does he describe himself? He comes to seek and save the lost. He comes as a servant. He washes feet. It's like, okay, did he lose himself, lose his identity because he was a servant? Because a lot of times that's what we'll think like, oh, if I serve, that means I have to leave Arlene at the door and I have to come and be the servant.
It's a zero-sum game.
To my identity. But it's like, no, wait a minute. What if part of who I am, maybe the best of who I am, is someone who says, I will put your interests above my own. If this is a dream you have, I'll support you. If you need a cup of water right now, I'll go get you one. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, but the attitude is, I'm here to help you. And obviously, both spouses, it's not just like one spouse who's supposed to do this and the other spouse just gets to sit there high and mighty all the time. No, it's both spouses coming into the relationship saying, how can I help you today?
That's
That's what I
good.
mean by serve your spouse. Now, if you say, well, I come into this marriage, right, with the attitude, how can I help you today? But my spouse, they never reciprocate that. Well, to be honest, as long as your spouse isn't abusive and isn't this, terrible thing like this, but just doesn't say thank you, doesn't really do the same kinds of acts of service that you have. And maybe this is a love language thing, as we'll just throw that in there. But realize that God, someday you're going to stand before God, and so will your spouse. And you will be judged on your works, and it's not unseen. So if you feel like I serve my spouse, but it's not seen, it's not recognized, know that the God of heaven sees you. And the God of heaven is like, good job, like still caring, being considerate, looking after your spouse, looking after their interests. These are little things like, oh, my husband would really like this kind of food over this kind of food. So you know what? Sure, we'll go to Italian instead of Thai tonight. Whatever it is. There are these little, it's just the attitude that is underneath that. Like, I care about you. I'm willing and I'm able to serve you. And you think of the giants in the Old Testament, David, Joshua, Moses. These people are referred to as servants of God. So for God, it's like, this is a promotion. The closer you get to God, the more servant-like that you're okay with, you know what? One of the ways I say it is, if you like it, I'll try it. It's just the attitude of like, it doesn't always have to be my way. But like, if you like it, like my husband, like camping, you like skiing, I don't like these things, I'll try them. That's like you're trying to serve your spouse. You're trying to look after their interests. So it's really a good thing. But again, just like in the packaging and the marketing, we've been told it's a bad thing.
Yes,
Thank
exactly.
you. That's fantastic.
So as we wrap up, Arlene, where can folks find you?
Yes, so you can go to makingmarriageeasier.com and you can find out more about the book. You can get free date night ideas. So makingmarriageeasier.com. You can get the book wherever books are sold, Amazon, wherever it is easy for you to get the book. And then my podcast is called the Happy Home Podcast.
So good.
So
We'll put those in the show
yeah,
notes.
exactly. So one of the things that we do on the podcast here is when we're wrapping up, we always ask, like, what's one big takeaway that our listeners can walk away with? We've talked about a lot of things here. So could you what's the lesson, the practical point that you think God would want people to take away from this conversation?
There's so many things, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that actually comes to my mind that we didn't necessarily exactly talk about, but it hits what we've been saying, is ask yourself and your spouse, when was the last time we had fun together? When was the last time we had fun together? And it will reveal, like, oh my goodness, we really are just like roommates. Like and like roommates that have been together a long time, because when you're first roommates, you still are having fun together. So, and it will help you to serve. It will help you to connect, all those things if you're having fun together. So ask yourself, when was the last time we had fun together? And if it was a super long time ago, then put it on the calendar and do something fun.
Wow.
That's a
love that.
great
That
little
really
tip.
is.
Yep, that'll help reveal a lot. So thank you so much, Arlene. Thanks to you for coming on the show today, for your husband, for being so supportive and helping you put together this great book, Making Marriage Easier. So I want to suggest that everybody check out Making Marriage Easier and Arlene Pellicane's podcast, and you can see those details in the show notes. So please also share today's episode with anyone who you think can benefit from it, and tag Arlene Pellicane on all your social media channels. Thanks for listening to I Wish You Could Hear This. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, forward today's audio or video link to a friend, counselor, or pastor who would be encouraged.